Whoever you are, from wherever you come, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, whatever family means to you, you are welcome. The identities that you hold, how you want to be called, and your pronouns are respected and welcomed here. Whatever the color of your skin, the language your grandparents spoke, the cultures that move in you, whatever your abilities and disabilities, we welcome you. Whatever you believe, whatever your theology, prayer, or sacrament, even if none at all, we welcome you. Whether you are here in person or joining us from home or zooming in from wherever your life journey has taken you, we welcome you. We join together in Unitarian Universalist principles. We are a community of communities, spiritual seekers acting out our faith in justice, united in covenant and the spirit of love. We welcome all of you.
Even lower. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Unitarian Universalist Church West on this fantastic July day here in Brookfield, Wisconsin. In this place, we occupied the traditional territory of the native peoples of the Seven Councils Fires: Ho-Chunk, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Menominee, Peoria, and Miami nations. These people have cared for this land for millennia, and those of us who are newcomers can learn from their example and their teachings. We acknowledge our continued need to address racism, which leads to violent deaths of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. We know that racism, white colonialism, anti-Semitism perpetuate inequalities, injustices, poverty, and exclusion in the U.S. society. We commit ourselves to becoming an anti-racist faith community dedicated to equity, racial justice, and right relations. It's so good to be together in this loving and evolving community, gathering in and among so many different spaces. We especially note that a substantial part of our gathered community are those of us joining us from their homes or other places. Wherever we are, physically, our hearts and spirits are one. My name's Barb Holzhauer. I serve on your board of trustees. And here are a few things we want to share just to have you settled in a little bit. If you're a newcomer, in person or with us online, and we'd like to connect further, please talk to me after the service or send an email to visitor@uucw.org, or use the welcome side of the yellow form that you received as you entered. You can put that form in the offertory baskets later on. Today, our children under grade 5 and younger are gathering on the lower level for UU Play. It's an active summer program of connecting, sharing, and playing together. Since it's nice outside today, I'm thinking they're probably going to spend some time outside too. For any youth staying in the sanctuary, there's lots of space to spread out on the carpet, anywhere in the room. The worship exploration table on the side, or the community room just outside the doors where the service is streamed. And of course, the nursery's open too. We will be offering a time in the service today for spoken joys and concerns. If you would prefer to put something in writing, the share side of this yellow form is available for that. And you can put that in the offering basket, or at any time, you can go to the side table and fill out a form or light a candle and put the form in the box over there. If socializing is for you, there's coffee and tea after the service today. I'll be there and happy to answer any questions you might have, or find someone that can if I can't. If you prefer a quieter space, you can stay here in the sanctuary and join others in conversation. There's a couple of announcements that I wanted to highlight. There's lots and lots of them. I don't know if you've had a chance to look through them yet. But I want to bring up one thing that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and that's number 6, the Interfaith Faith Council of Greater Milwaukee, which has, over the years, had this program called the Amazing Faiths Dinners. Obviously, during COVID, that got suspended. So this is the restart of that program. And having both participated and hosted in those, I want to give a real plug for those. I think that you will come away from that feeling very hopeful that no matter where you're coming from, we all have a lot more in common than we have differences. There's also an opportunity to participate in a screening of a film here on Thursday, August 31st, so way at the end of next month, called The Abortion Talks, a documentary that follows the crimes, trial, and murder of John Salvi, the story of 6 women, all of them leaders in the pro-life and pro-choice movements. And registration is required for that, and you can find the link to that registration. Then the other thing I wanted to highlight was number 18, and that's Sophia's Multicultural Fair coming up kind of in the middle of August on Saturday, the 12th, from 10 to 6 at Cutler Park in Waukesha. There's lots of information about Sophia and lots of good times and time to coordinate with other people. Let's see now. So it's really a privilege to have this once a week opportunity to explore and create meaning in the company of others. May this morning's service guide us on the path of true love.
Good morning. My name is Eddie Daniel, and my pronouns are he and him. As a member of the worship ministry team, it is my privilege to be leading the service today. Our guest speaker this morning is attorney Roy B. Evans. Roy is a lifelong resident of Milwaukee and a graduate of North Division High School. He holds a doctorate of law degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Roy is a dedicated educator and has been a private practice attorney in the Milwaukee community for over 44 years. He has served on numerous government policy boards and committees, as well as local nonprofit boards. He is recognized for his outspoken advocacy on issues, particularly those impacting the lives and conditions of the African American community. Roy is a member of St. Matthew CME Church and married to his wife Georgia, who is here for over 56 years. He is currently a Legacy Emeritus member of the Wisconsin Bar and recipient of the 2019 Frank P. Zeidler Award for his public service to the Milwaukee community. Welcome, Roy.
Thank you.
And now, please stand in body or in spirit as we sing hymn number 1051, We Are.
I'm happy to have Maria O'Connor and Kathy Murphy helping me lead this hymn this morning. This is one of those hymns that has lots of sections that repeat. So let me just give you a quick tutorial on how this works. We see the first 2 lines have these brackets that say 1 and 2. We repeat those 2 lines using each of those endings the first time and the second time. Then here's the really tricky one at the bottom of the first page. We see those 2 vertical lines with the 2 dots next to them. That's a repeat sign. Remember where this is, because at some point we're going to turn the page and then have to come back to this spot. Okay. And if we look ahead at the music, that spot is on the 3rd page of the song. At the end of the 3rd line, you see the words, the wisdom of ages. Oh, there's another 2 vertical lines with 2 dots. At that point, we're going to go all the way back to page 1 again. So that's the big one to notice. Here we go.
each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Our chalice lighting today is entitled A Spark of Hope by Melanie Davis. Please join with me in saying the words printed in the order of service. If ever there were a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice.
Good morning. All that we share is sacred, by Andre Moe. This blessing was written in honor of two Unitarians, Martha and Waitstill Sharp, who during World War II dared to risk their own comfort in order to help save the lives of those in desperate need. As we gather together, may we remember when you share with me what is most important to you, that is where listening begins. When I show you that I hear you, when I say your life matters, that is where compassion begins. When I open the door to greet you, that is where hospitality begins. When I venture out to bring you to shelter, that is where love begins. When I risk my comfort to ease your suffering, when I act against hatred, violence, and injustice. That is where courage begins. When we experience the full presence of each other because of our shared humanity, because of our differences, that is where holy gratitude begins. May this space be a table that is not complete until all are welcome. May this table be a space of beauty where together we create a series of miracles and where all that we share is sacred. May it be so.
We enter now our time for sharing of joys and sorrows that touch our individual lives, our way to express through ritual the many ways that we touch and are touched by each other. In a moment, you'll be invited to come to the mic to share your joy or concern. If you have something you'd rather not share aloud, you may use the QR code from the order of service, or the share side of the yellow slip that was put in your order of service to put something in writing. Raise your hand if you need a writing implement. For those of you at home, and for anyone at other times during the week, you can use the link in our weekly e-news to let us know what's going on in your lives and in your heart. Remember, what you share today is only for the ears of those gathered now. It will not be posted in the video of the service or shared in our e-news. So, if you have something to speak, come to the mic, or raise your hand and an usher will bring you a mic. I will light a candle for you, and after each sharing, I'll invite you all to respond with me, "We hold you in love." Now I will light an additional candle for all of those in our larger community who have suffered from oppression, and in particular, oppression brought on by hate, intimidation, and indifference due to the color of their skin or the origins of their ancestors. And as we do, we will light one last candle for all of those joys and concerns not shared, but held deep in our hearts. We hold you in love. Beautiful. Thank you, Reuben. Our reading this morning is entitled Healing by Adam Lawrence Dyer, who is an African-American educator and an LGBTQ and justice reform activist, and who currently leads the California Equity Ministry Network. I speak his words with humility and the understanding that they are his words and his experience and not my own. Don't speak to me of healing racism or wounded souls or the painful hurt until you are willing to feel the scars on my great-great-grandmother Laurie's back. Don't speak to me of values or justice or righting wrongs until you are able to feel the heartache of my great-grandfather Graham, whose father may have been his master. Don't speak to me of equity or opportunity or the common good until you are able to hear the fear from my grandmother May as the only black woman in her college. Don't speak to me of passion or longing or standing on the side of love until you know the shame felt by my mother Edwina, mocked by teachers for the curve of her back. Don't speak to me of together or understanding or empathy until you know my rage as a young actor hearing the direction to be more black, more male. The pain you are trying to heal has no name. This pain you speak of has no story. It is anonymous, vague, and empty. Don't speak to me of healing, for I heal the second I am ripped apart. My wounds self-suture, and like the clever creature that I am, I just grow new legs to outrun the pain ever faster. It is something I have had to practice for generations that feel like an eternity. So please don't speak to me of healing, because you cannot know what healing means until you know the hurt.
Thank you, Eddie. If I was the lighting the chalice candle, I'd light a candle for everybody in here. You know, sometimes I'll go places and nobody looks you in the face, nobody speaks to you. But the joy in saying hello and recognizing the humanity of everybody that spoke to my wife and I this morning is just something really spiritual. And we both appreciate that very much. And I knew the Finlayson family. It's so tragic. So I'm glad that a candle was lit in his memory. First of all, in keeping with African tradition, I asked of my elders for permission to speak. Now, I know there's somebody in here older than me. That is part of my tradition. I'm 76 now, so do we need to start? So is there anyone? Thank you, I appreciate that very much. Hotep. Hotep is ancient African Kemetic Egyptian greeting, like assalamu alaikum or hello or habaragani or what's up. It comes in, it means come in peace, go in peace. Imhotep was a multi-talented genius and architect of the Great Pyramid, and it derives from his name, Hotep. I bring you greetings from the St. Matthew CME church family, of which I am a member. Dr. Richard Shaw is the pastor and currently also the president of Micah, and he has spoken here in the past as well. Your last speaker, Reverend Miller, I've known since childhood, and I know you were in good hands. As my grandmother would say, in the context of time and history, our lives last less than the flicker of a heartbeat. My grandmother also used to say, go, see, be seen, be heard, and be gone, because if you hang around too long, you will become irrelevant. So I want to stay true to my task this morning, and I'm writing a book about my grandmother called All the Things My Grandmother Tried to Tell Me, but I Wasn't Listening. Words of Wit and Wisdom. It's about her personal influence and of those who encouraged and inspired me along my life's journey. The many teachers, mentors, professors, and valid friendships that I've acquired throughout my life. When I initially agreed to share some remarks this morning from my Afrocentric point of view, I didn't realize how hard it would be to put a 3-hour lecture into a 20-minute time frame. So I'm going to try to concentrate on my assignment, condense 3 hours into 20 minutes, including footnotes. So please bear with me. And I'm probably going to talk more about the cross than the noose. But I was given an instruction, if at the end of my remarks nobody was looking at their watch, I could probably take a couple more minutes, if you would like. In brief, I've lived in Milwaukee all of my life. I live currently, my wife, on the corner of Grant Boulevard, North Avenue. So this is familiar territory. My parents came here in 1946 after the war, escaping the bitter hardships in the South. Many who came with them looking for a better life went back south because the weather was too cold, and working in a factory up north was no different from picking cotton down south. For some reason, my parents stayed and endured the hardships of living in Milwaukee. For the first 2 years of my life, we lived in a trailer camp for black veterans next to the Carver Park swimming pool until a house opened up. Despite being a veteran who served honorably for his country, my father could not get a VA loan to buy a house of his choosing. The house opened up on 13th and Vine in the heart of Bronzeville was wholly inadequate. But we lived there for 18 years until the freeway came along and displaced us again. Regardless of our living conditions, my brothers and sister and I never lacked for love and caring, and were grounded by high expectations. My father was a second shift crane operator at Harnischfigger Corp., and I did not know until I helped to prepare his obituary that he worked at Harnischfigger for 35 years and never missed a single day of work. Never missed a single day. I thought he didn't like me. You know, I was his oldest son and an athlete to play football, basketball, running track, but he would never come to my events. And it wasn't until then that I understood why. Despite his dedication to serve, racism and his fourth grade education didn't provide him with the many options. But nevertheless, he was instrumental, along with a variety of spiritual and religious influence, coupled with real-life challenges and experiences, in guiding me and helping me to shape my worldview. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a bishop. I'm not a priest. I'm not a deacon. I don't even sing in the choir or read the Bible every day. But my spiritual upbringing and journey runs deep, nevertheless. I was baptized in a Baptist church and married 56 years ago in a Christian Methodist church, to which I still belong. I graduated from a Catholic college, Dominican in Racine, where the devout dedications of the nuns made me believe that angels, in fact, do exist. My Nation of Islam brothers taught me the importance of eating healthy, and I haven't eaten pork in 46 years. The Unification Church provided me with an opportunity to experience Russia, Japan, Korea, and I am thankful for those valuable and influential life experiences. But every summer from birth, my parents shipped me to Mississippi to stay with my grandparents, who lived directly across the street or across the road from South Liberty Baptist Church, where there seemed to be something going on all day, every day. Sunday school, church services, funerals, weddings, choir rehearsals, revivals, baptisms, civil rights meetings, etc. It was a continuous hub of activity. My grandmother would sit on the front porch reading her Bible and greeting just about everybody who knew her. She taught me how to always speak when spoken to. Say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, thank you, excuse me, and please. And these are words we don't hear often enough these days. One day I asked her, why was she so popular? And she just said, because I'm closer to God than you. I said, I guess she meant that you must always respect your elders. There's always somebody older than you. You're always younger than somebody else. And those who are older than you are closer to God than you. So that's what I assumed without questioning her further. I guess what I asked her again, why do some funerals have overflowing crowds and at some funerals hardly anybody came? And she said, you'll never know how popular you are until you see who comes to your funeral. I guess she meant we will never know and never get to know how popular we are. I got up the nerve one day and asked her if she really knew God like she always said. She looked at me, ordered me inside, picked up the phone, and asked the operator to connect her with God. Remember those kind of, you dial and catch the operator? See, we got some old timers in here that know what's going on. The operator said the God's line was busy and would probably call her back later. That's what she told me. After that, every time I heard the phone ring, I knew it must have been God. And after that, I stopped asking questions and was convinced that if she had God's telephone number, I didn't need to ask any more questions. Before I leave Mississippi, just a footnote about my grandfather. My grandfather used to take me to work with him, and I'd play in the parking lot of a white church where he worked as a janitor. And even though he was a janitor, he wasn't allowed to go into the church using the front steps or the front door. As a child, I was oblivious to this and just excited about being down south. My grandfather was a very smart man with a deep sense of pride. I found out as I got older that he had a teaching degree in mathematics, but had to work as a janitor in a white church because he was colored and not allowed to teach. And even though he was a tax-paying citizen, he was not allowed to even vote. This was during the 50s and the 60s. As I came to know and recognize racism, I deposited those facts in my spiritual journal and promised myself to somehow find a way to make amends for the unfair indignities that he had to endure and suffer. My grandmother would say, you have to be creative and work twice as hard to reach your life's goals. So taking that to heart, now in his memory, when I go into the voting booth and there is someone I cannot vote for, I write his name in as a write-in candidate. And I guess the election people are saying, who in the heck is this Oscar Harris Jr.? I voted for him for superintendent of schools, for judges, for president. You know, he could not vote, but I could vote for him. It's a small but meaningful gesture that keeps me connected to his wonderful and enduring spirit. I was especially happy that my parents and grandparents lived long enough to see me get married, raise my own family, earn a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a law degree, and become an attorney. And yes, I got into law school as a qualified affirmative action education opportunity student without legacy considerations. I worked hard, did well, and now 44 years later, having practiced in one of the most difficult cities for Blacks to live in America, like my father, I have managed to survive. Notwithstanding the nuns at Dominican College who taught me the dedication to service and social justice was life's noble mission, which they effectively used through education to challenge me to open my mind and imagination to the world. I am forever grateful for those lessons. I've had the honor and privilege to study with some of our brightest scholars of ancient classical African civilizations and research the historical treasures of antiquity, which included the Egyptian mystery system, the origin of religion, and comparable world religions. This awesome experience allowed me to expand my never-ending search for clarity and purpose of meaning. Briefly, how does this form my own worldview? My worldview is based on an Afrocentric perspective, an African-centered perspective, or Afrocentric worldview that goes back thousands of years. Thousands of years ago, my ancient African ancestors believed that a woman gave birth to the universe. These ancestors were Africans known as Kemites, or as the Greeks would call them, Egyptians. And just like to note that Egypt is in Africa and not the Middle East. It is in Africa. That's another lecture, but it was taken out to facilitate some other political considerations. Invite me back and we'll talk about that. Socrates and Plato and Pythagoras and many others studied in Egypt after it was conquered by the Romans and the Egyptians. The first thing they went is to get the written treasures, not just the gold and the jewelry. The knowledge was more important than anything. You think those guys just went to Greek grade school and all of a sudden became geniuses? No, they had to study geniuses, which they did. And then again, that's another lecture as well. The symbol of the sacred ankh, and I just have a slight illustration, and most of you have seen it in mummy movies and things like that. The ankh, this is the symbol of the ankh. This was created thousands of years before the cross and Christianity. And just briefly, what it means is Africans believe that a woman gave birth to the universe. And what this means is this represents the womb of the mother, the staff of the father, which creates the supreme opposites, the son and the daughter. This means mother, father, son, and daughter. Because the family was believed to be the center of the universe. Not just the mother, not just the father, but the family. And again, we are our family. We are the center of the universe. Not just me, not just you, but together, we are the center of the universe and the center of creation. Centuries later, with the advent of many wars in Islam and Christianity, the ankh became the cross, instead depicting it to represent the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Whatever happened to the mother and the rest of the family? It all depends on your point of view and what you believe. This act, along with defeminization of religion, came from the Eurocentric worldview, which dominates and shapes the world we live in today, unfortunately, in my opinion. As a comparative graphic illustration, an Afrocentric worldview is horizontal, this way. Some are more expanded than the others, but nobody's above except God and the ancestors. My grandmother and God, they're up there together. I know it. Some are more expanded. So we never look down on anyone. And I'm not afraid of you if you're going to be more expanded than me, because if we are a family, we all grow when one grows. And the chief may be a little more expanded with authority, but his wife was way over here with her authority. So it's the Afrocentric is horizontal. Some are more expanded than others, but no one could look down on another except for God and our ancestors, whose spirits continue to bless us, that we must revere and respect. And I know my grandmother's in heaven this Sunday morning, fixing God some fresh eggs, grits, buttermilk pecan biscuits, fresh honey from the hive, and sweet mint for his coffee. Now that's heaven. I know God is allowing her to do this because that's what she does best. One of the things she does best. That's what I believe. On the other hand, the Eurocentric worldview is perpendicular, up and down, with somebody at the top and somebody at the bottom. And I'll speak in a minute about when you racialize that, then who was at the top, who was at the bottom. You take the woman out of the ankh and the cross, she's not at the top, she's somewhere closer to the bottom, or in the middle, or somewhere, but not at the top. It's a top-down worldview of everything. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The women are gone. The family is not there. Let's just use a footnote here and look at the Eurocentric worldview as it facilitates and perpetuates racism and social injustice in our society. First, let me state that race, as it is commonly used, is a misnomer. Race is a Eurocentric, man-made creation. Let's put it in its proper context. From the beginning, as is now, the only race is the human race. If God the Father, and we are all God's children created in his image, then we all have God's DNA in us. So who's to say that God does not look like me or you or anybody else? I don't look much like my great-grandfather, Jack Brown, who was born in Ireland and migrated to America during the potato famine in the mid-1800s, but yet I carry his DNA everywhere I go. But for the colorization of race, the paranoia surrounding replacement theory could not exist. Racial characterization was created on purpose to divide and conquer. It is a conveniently calculated, disingenuous, manufactured tool of white supremacy and disguised as a tool to foster global world domination of resources and people, whether you agree with me or not, because I'm speaking from a African-centered worldview. My point of view, this is how I see it, this is how it has impacted me in my life. So that creates my worldview. Without race, there is no racism. It's just that simple. You may call it something else, but color is a racial category, is merely used to conveniently justify and explain racism. For the record, I accept the current existence of my blackness and the current universal meaning of the designation black. But I consider myself, by definition, an American of African descent. As Americans of African descent, we are unique culturally because of our unique historical relationship to this country, in our customs and our traditions. I have a special regard for Maulana Karenga, who created Kwanzaa, and I know him personally. And people don't know that we celebrated the first Kwanzaa right here in Milwaukee. And again, that's another lecture for another time as to how that came about. But there's a lot of history that we should be sharing. Every year, my wife and I tour the South, in South Carolina primarily, the Low Country, to study the Gullah culture, as it is the beginning of our unique African experience in America. Enslaved people who were brought here from Africa to America were not crackheads, thugs, cart thieves, or welfare mothers. They were craftsmen, horticulturalists, brick and iron makers, shipbuilders, fishermen, laborers who built America for the benefit and enrichment of the enslavers who, for the most part, were not skilled enough to do it themselves, and who needed a way to justify and control through the forced terror of enslavement. Thus, we are not a colorblind society, as some now would like to proclaim. It's too late for that. Race and its application dominates everything and is a permanent part of America's past, present, and unfortunately, future legacy. From an Afrocentric perspective, the term race means categorization, marginalization, stigmatization, demonization, a black man did it, alienation, penalization. Wisconsin leads the nation in black incarceration. Brutalization, slavery and lynching speaks for itself. Domination, deprivation, separation, separate but equal. Does that sound familiar? From a Eurocentric perspective, the term race signifies superiority, domination, entitlement, appropriation, emasculation, exploitation of resources, power, authority, and qualified immunity from transgressions regardless of guilt. You see the Eurocentric up and down, Afrocentric goes this way, now it's the cross. So what does it symbolize and mean to us? This mindset the Afrocentric perspective mindset is necessary in order to maintain systems that justify racism, sexism, misogyny, with the racialization that it continues to advocate and perpetuate, like war, violence, and survival. It all goes in together. It's a million-piece puzzle that we need to put the pieces together to see the whole thing. A lot of times we cling to one piece or two pieces, but we need to take time to put the pieces together so we can see the whole picture. From an Afrocentric perspective, if a woman gave birth to the universe, why can't women be priests and popes and bishops or anything else they want to be? Ask the Catholic Church or the Southern Baptists or the strict believers of Islam why. Or better yet, ask them why not. If a woman were in charge, don't you think that there would be a right to choose whatever course they wish to take with their minds and their bodies? From an Eurocentric point of view, this is simply impossible. I know my grandmother would not stand for it. It seems to me that if you are pro-life, shouldn't you also be pro-health as well? There's a lot of contradictions that we need to take a look at and unravel. Again, if we were having a 3-hour lecture, I would have 2 hours and 40 minutes to go. But my time is running out, and I can only share a couple of additional footnotes. Like, we are now governed by terms like woke, wake news, false facts, as substitutes for truth, justice, and equality. Book banning is an attempt to alter and erase history and cover up the real atrocities and failures of American democracy. Banning books is dangerous. I'm an English major. I've read hundreds of books, and I've got several books on the banned book list that I've read that are critically important, that now, in downsizing, I'm looking to pass them on to somebody who will accept and appreciate them as I have, so that they can have the impact of continuing on my legacy, whatever that might be. Banning books is dangerous. Do we then ban the Bible? Because it is full of war, murder, treachery, and questionable relationships. How far will we go? Or how far will we let it go? It's the factual American history that some seek to deny all children because the disingenuous excuse that they don't want their children to learn CRT because it might make them uncomfortable. Reconciling and learning the truth about the contradiction and injustices of our society, as a matter of fact, is no doubt both painful and uncomfortable. But if our children are to only be comfortable in their learning of our history, that makes me uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is living in the trailer for 2 years. Uncomfortable is living 18 years in inadequate, substandard house. You had no choice but to call home. Uncomfortable is not knowing whether you have a future or not because of the circumstances of your past. Now that's being uncomfortable. When you got endowments and money waiting on you from your parents and grandparents and all of that, but when you have nothing and have to get out and don't know where you're going and don't know what you have, it's a different feeling. Another quick note, now right-wing miseducators are even trying to claim that blacks benefited from slavery. I'm still trying to get an adjustment in my mind to that rationalization. They're trying to say that the 1921 Tulsa massacre of over 300 black people and the destruction of 1,500 dwellings and businesses without a single white person being charged was not about race. Now that makes me uncomfortable. I always ponder and challenge anyone to show me the picture of a white man, his wife, and child hanging from a tree while black people are at their feet taking pictures and having a picnic. Show me one picture, and I'll give up my Afrocentric worldview, denounce critical race theory, and never again complain about my discomfort. Never, ever again. Just show me one picture. And I know, having gone south as an 11-year-old, having seen a man hanging in a tree. He was in a burlap bag where you pick cotton, and it wasn't no small bag that you pick the cotton in, like you go to Pick and Save and get a little bag. It was a big old bag. It was hanging in a tree. The only thing I could remember was the smell. And once you smell death, you know death. So it's a personal connection with reality. You've probably never seen a man hanging in a tree. But to get your imagination to understand the realities of those things that happen, if you want the contradiction, just show me one picture. People of goodwill, and I'm speaking to us. Need I remind us that we are all in the midst of a reckless mass murder epidemic and gun violence crisis we just experienced just the other day from one of our beloved comrades being buried and eulogized? The only purpose for a handgun is to kill another human being. That's the only purpose. You can't hunt with a handgun. The only purpose for a weapon of mass destruction is to kill as many human beings as possible. You can't hunt with an AR-7. So what is the purpose? In my legal opinion, having studied the Constitution as part of my work as a lawyer, my view is that the Second Amendment gun ownership is a privilege, not a right. Commit a crime, catch a felony, and go to prison, your gun privileges are taken away. Commit a crime, go to prison, you still can retain your First Amendment right, which up until now cannot be abridged. So their rights and their privileges, the interpretation of history over a period of time have turned a privilege into an absolute right that destroys us with the overabundance of guns and carnage that it has created, run by the gun industry and the war industry, which is trillions and billions of trillions of dollars. that we pay for as taxpaying citizens. Daily, the U.S. spends trillions of dollars on war and weapons of mass destruction. Yet people go homeless and kids are undernourished in the richest nation on earth. From an Afrocentric point of view, it doesn't make sense. Our Supreme Court is now out of control and has been forever co-opted by Citizens United case, which signaled the end of American democracy and the American ideals our forefathers intended, fought, and died for. Our Constitution and its interpretation is of critical importance and impacts us all. Just let the Taliban or Sharia law in Afghanistan be a reminder and warning that we must fight to maintain the separation of church and state. In Iran, the morality police could come in here, arrest all of us, flog us in public, hang us at the Brewer Stadium in a public display of power just for holding this church service. So you don't want right-wing evangelicals dictating what you can read, who you can marry, who you can love as amendment to the Constitution. How do we meet the challenges? Just since I agreed to do this, the world has experienced global flooding and monsoons. Canada is on fire. Record rain in New Hampshire. Phoenix is 125 degrees in the shade. And the Midwest is being ravaged by catastrophic tornadoes. Is global warming real or just fake news or false facts or a hoax? What does your sacred text and universal Unitarian religion say about this? Does it provide us with a roadmap for what to do? What about declaring our massive inequity in the richest country in the world an epidemic? Like COVID, there must be a cure. Poverty and injustice in the land of the free has turned out to be a series of misguided social science experiments. Is there a need for protests and accountability? Prisons are full and drugs continue to flow in never-ending waves of despair and addiction. I think we can all agree on that. I talked with the fire chief the other day, and he talked about the fentanyl epidemic in a way that almost brought me to my knees. But some of us are oblivious because we don't see our next door neighbor or our friends or our child's buddy or in the throes of addiction. We become immune when we don't see it. But once you see it, you experience it, and once you experience it, you know it. Because all of our lives matter. Black lives matter, white lives matter, and if we were talking about race, the human race of lives matter. I fear in a couple of years, artificial intelligence will replace us all anyway. I now have a car that tells me what to do and when to do it, whether I want to do it or not. I could footnote forever, but my meter is running out of time, and the sharing of my point of view must come to an end. I really wanted to talk about the Brookfield Noose incident as a closer to home example of an illustration of how you use your knowledge of history to speak truth to power. And I don't see anybody looking at their watches, so maybe I'll sneak in a couple more seconds to illustrate that, because I think it's important to us. And I appreciate this 20 minutes or so that I've been given. As I close, I leave you with this Afrocentric point of view. How are our religions and beliefs helping us to accomplish our collective scriptured spiritual goals and objectives? Is it merely ceremonial tradition and rhetoric that motivates us, or will our religious beliefs and commitment to them propel us to overcome our fear of what we believe versus taking action on what we really need to do and know? You have to ask questions so that you can get answers. And I learned as an attorney, never ask a question you don't already have the answer for. So when you go into discussion, you know whether you're being dealt with and the truth, and you can debate versus argue. I ask, as a common human race, that we overcome the fear of each other's artificial differences, which stand in the way of our joint efforts of common good and purpose. These are the real challenges of our faith and religion. From an Afrocentric point of view, in my opinion, we must find a way to get on the same level by teaching of our ancestors, guided by the teachings of our ancestors. They have put it for us to pick up, like the books I want to pass forward, and there are messages that we need to look at, interpret, understand, and incorporate. And if we can't do anything about it, we need to lay a foundation for things to be done better. My parents always wanted me to have more than they had, and they had very little. And I the same for each and every generation. And if it's on this level, it's for my children, your children, all of God's children. From an Afrocentric point of view, in my opinion, we must find a way to get on the same level, guided by the teachings of our ancestors. How can we expect to accomplish anything when I don't know you, you don't know me? I don't know who you know. You don't know who I know. I don't know what you know. You don't know what I know. We don't have any history of collective joy from the emotion that comes from joint shared accomplishment, which is essential for the development of trust, faith, and belief in ourselves and each other. I mean, what have we done? It's just like a team. When you win the championship, the whole team is joyous because you put in the hard work, the effort, you've conquered. And that joint sense of accomplishment is important. What can we point to as a joint sense of accomplishment where we could share the joys and emotions of elation from having done something and accomplished something? And what this does is lay down a foundation that says we can do something. Because a lot of times we doubt whether we can do things. We get in our own way. To allow this causes us to trust more in fear as opposed to seeking the tenets of truth in our deliverance. Without the basics of who we are, how can we accomplish anything or be true to our faith or what we believe? Like in the line in Lawrence Dyer's poem that was read earlier, the poem Healing, the pain you are trying to heal has no name. This pain you speak of has no story. It is anonymous, vague, and empty. So please don't speak to me of healing because you cannot know what healing means until you know the hurt. Take those words to heart. Write them down, read them over, incorporate them into your soul and your spirit. So in our present state of being, we have to hope and pray that we can accomplish something meaningful and worthwhile in life. You must find a way to put the promise of your Unitarian liberal social action creed of Unitarian believers with power enough to overcome themselves in the pursuit of truth and knowledge that our ancestors have already provided us, notwithstanding the artificial notion of race, color, or unrelenting opposition to who you choose to love. My grandmother would say, "You don't have to love me to respect me, but you do have to love and respect yourself in order to gain the respect of others." You don't have to like me, that's not important. Respecting me is the most important thing. Again, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak in the sacred place, at the sacred service. Thus, I can truthfully say that this Unitarian Universal Church West experience is now a part of my continuing African-centered worldview experience. And with your permission, I will incorporate it into my continued spiritual journey. My hope and prayer is that at least my grandmother is pleased, and I know she's listening. Hotep. Okay, is anybody looking at their watch? All right, I just want to do this, bring something a little closer to home, something that's real, and we have to deal with realities. When I go into the courtroom, it's not what you think, what you feel, what you believe. It's about the facts, the proof, and the evidence, which is a much higher standard than what you think and what you believe. But I just want to bring this up, and I'll do it in a brief form. My pastor and his wife, and I don't know how they got to live in a house up on in Brookfield on Blue Mountain Road, but he came up from Alabama, and they've been living there for many, many years. Back in 2019, his son came home. His son went to Brookfield Central or something like that. He was on his way home from school and discovered a noose hanging in the tree. This is in 2019, not too long ago, and discovered a noose hanging in a tree next to their house. They reported it to the police. And then the church service that Sunday, the pastor brought up, in case we hear it someplace else, that this noose was found hanging from their house. And I could tell he was upset, but he had to be strong in his presentation. But it upset me having seen a man hanging in a tree. And I know it upset him being from Alabama. So I went up to him afterwards and said, "Hey, how do you want to pursue this? Do you want to, take this any further, or just you?" I said, "Hey, because this is upsetting to me. Believe me." He says, "Well, let's see what we can do." So I had read a newspaper article in Waukesha Freeman, where the report of this by the lieutenant of the Brookfield Police Department said that, it was a prank. And, it was really not directed at the only black family on Blue Mountain Road, but some other family who had a death in the family by something just totally ridiculous. It's almost like saying slavery was beneficial to black people. This is how I felt. Not that it was an equivalent, but this is how I felt. So what I did was, I'm saying, look, no, we're not taking that. I called my own press conference. I called the Waukesha Freeman and all of the press that I knew. I did a press release that I have, I can share with you. We had a press conference at the church with the media. And they came and we explained how the noose represented something to us that was more than what that news article had tried to portray to the general public. They always want to take the narrative and run with it. And I'm saying, no, we're not going to have that. So we had that press conference, and there was a newspaper article in the local black press about it. So it just so happened a couple of days later, because we were trying to get a meeting with the police chief that they wouldn't set up. So it just so happens a couple of days later, I was at a street festival and saw Tom Barrett, who is a good friend of mine, the mayor of Milwaukee. I asked him to take him to wherever he went with. I said, I know how to speak Spanish. He said, no, that's not going to work where I'm going. So he didn't take me with him. But he said, I saw the article in the newspaper, and I said, yeah, the church is upset. We're kind of pissed off about this. He says, well, is there anything I can do? I know the mayor of Brookville. And I said, well, you can call him. And he said, I'll do that. So Tom called the mayor of Brookville. 2 days later, we get a call from the police department saying, can we meet? So we set up the meeting, Pastor Shaw, his son, and we met with the police chief, not the captain, not the lieutenant, but the chief. The mayor made him get up out of his sick bed and meet with us. This is how important it was to the Brookville mayor. So we met and we talked about our differences. You know, what are you going to do about this? Oh, we have somebody investigated and they filed a report. And I said, well, wait a minute, that's not enough. There's a newspaper article that said that it was, you know, we have to have something affirming that what this really was. And he said, and to make a long story short, he talked about the good people of Brookville. And I'm saying, man, them ain't the people I'm talking about. You know, I was the third person to ever work at Brookville Square back in 1968. My wife worked at the Brookville Square for 15 years. I went to college in Waukesha as well. I know Brookville. I know these. I ain't talking about the fine people of Brookville. I'm talking about the person who hung this noose in a tree as an act of intimidation. I said, the next thing you know, understanding these acts of intimidation, there's burning crosses on the line. And we need our preacher to come to church comfortable so he can minister to us and do baptismals and weddings without worrying about going home and his house burned down. This is how it's impacting us. I said, so we need more than just... So we went on, and to make a long story short, because I know I'm over time, he said, well, what do you want me to do? I said, well, you know, we want you to just give us justice like you would give anybody else. Because I'm saying, well, you know, the noose may mean to you, you know, hanging rustlers in the Wild West. But the noose means to me, you know, hanging black people for wanting to vote. So there's a different perspective here. Because when you speak truth to power, you got to educate power sometime too. Because they're not all powerful, they just have authority that can be abused, misused, and premised on something that I'm saying, no, man, that's not going to work. So he was getting a little irritated because he was sick. I could see that, but play that, hey, it ain't my fault, and play that to our advantage. So I said, well, what are you going to do about this? I said, what are you going to tell the mayor? Oh, he didn't know I knew that the mayor, he didn't know that. I said, what are you going to tell the mayor about our discussions? You know, and I said, well, I got to go back to our church membership, and they are angry. They're having meetings right now talking about boycotting Brookville Square, you know, demonstrating out there, you know, and so I got to go back and tell them that nothing's going to happen. So again, to make a long story even shorter, he said, we're going to put a camera on that corner, we're going to double the patrol, and I'm going to assign a detective to investigate this. They sent the noose to the crime lab in Madison. It did have DNA on it. So they got the DNA. They don't know who the person was because they weren't in the the database, but they have the DNA. And the moral of the story is just give us justice like you would give anybody else. So when that person gets caught doing something else again in the future, they will be in the database. And see, when you speak truth to power, when you threaten them sometimes, when I say we're going to caravan out here, we're going to get all the black churches in Milwaukee to come out here to Brookfield, and we're going to demonstrate, and mayors don't like bad press. So you got to know how to push the buttons to get what you wanted. And all we wanted was justice. But we had to educate, speak truth to power in order to get the justice that we got. So that's just an abbreviation of the Noose part of this presentation. So again, thank all of you. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and fellowship with you. And this has been a tremendous experience that will go into my spiritual database that will guide me again for the rest of my life and hopefully beyond. Thank you.
Wow, that was very powerful, wasn't it? The green light is on. Okay. Oh, I just have to be closer. All right. One of the ways that UUCW helps to address the human needs in our community is through our Split the Plate program. Thanks to a suggestion from Mary Ross, our Split the Plate partner for mid-July through August is Our Space. Since 1987, Our Space has been empowering individuals living with mental illness and substance abuse to achieve their full potential. They do this by providing recovery-oriented, person-centered services and programs in a safe and accepting environment. With us today is Melissa Wojniewski with Our Space to tell us more about it.
Thank you, Kathy. Good morning. I've worked at Our Space for almost 8 years now, and we cover so many amazing services. On the building, our main campus, we have a day program that is for adults 18 and older. They can come and enjoy just company with friends going through similar things. They can attend groups. We have an OT on staff, an activities manager, and we do have the building staffed with peer support, so if someone just needs to talk and having a bad day, and someone is accessible all the time. We have the Price is Right shop, which I want to plug hardcore right now. That shop does not run unless it's with the donations of the community. Now that we're coming into the colder months that it will be fast approaching, we're always in need of blankets and sheets and anything that will help the homeless population. We get a lot of people that are incarcerated as well, that when they're out, they have nothing. They need to come and get dishes or clothing. I can't stress that enough. So if you're going through your stuff, definitely reach out. We will even come and get things if you're unable to bring them. It's a vital service, especially in where we're at. We're on 15th and National, so we have people all the time. We also have the first Milwaukee state-ran peer-run respite, which we are so very proud of. There's about, I think, 6 in the whole state, but this one's in Milwaukee. These could just be popping up all over the place. They're there to not have people feel like they have to go to the hospital. They're there 24/7 by peer support that have lived experience, whether it be mental health or substance use or both. 24/7, if they want to talk at 3 o'clock in the morning, someone is there to talk to them. And sometimes that's all it needs is to be heard and to feel that you're heard. So that is a 7-day stay at no cost to the guest at all. They're provided food, a locked room that they have their own code to, so it's very safe. I can't plug that more enough either. So we will be in the back after this is done, and I have also another peer support with me that she also goes into the community because we provide services throughout Milwaukee. We do outreach to the inner city people as well by giving out hygiene products. I'll be in my car and see someone on the side of the road and hand someone something because they have not gotten anything all day long. So feel free to ask either of us any questions that you want to, and we're available after. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Melissa. To help support our space, go to the UUCW website's Donate tab and select Split the Plate from the menu, or text or mail your donation today using the information that you can find probably in your order of service. Thank you for your generosity to our space, and we will now gratefully receive your offering.
And now please stand in body or in spirit, and we will sing hymn number 1045, There is a Balm in Gilead.
To make the wounded whole.
Is this on? Oh, there we go. Our closing words, entitled Go in Peace, Seeking Justice, were written by Jim McGaw. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in mindless oblivion. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go without challenging yourself or others. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in utter ease and comfort. When I say go in peace, what I mean is go in peace seeking justice. What I mean is go in peace committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. When I say go in peace, I mean go in the peace that is created when together we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. Go in peace.